Hey, what's up, everybody? Today we're going to be doing a quick tier list, or relatively quick. I want to make this under 40 minutes if I can. I did tier list about 3 weeks ago. This was after the Escape from the Underworld patch came out in Jingwei, and I think there's been some changes recently, so I really wanted to do another tier list to kind of go over that and just to see where gods are at the moment. So if you haven't watched a tier list before, just keep in mind that this is based off of a lot of different things, what the current meta is. So this has to do with god balance changes in patches, item balance changes as well. It also has a lot to do with how the Pro League players are using gods. There's some gods that might move up in the meta just because one player is using that god. For instance, Kabrakan is being used a lot by the European team Paradigm, and that probably puts him up in the tier list a little bit more just because you're seeing him in that pro play. So the Pro League really does have a huge impact because it has like a trickle down effect. If a Pro League player starts using it, then all the ranked players, who love the SPL, they'll start using that same god, and then that'll trickle down into casuals as well. So it's really this big kind of like trickle down effect as far as the meta goes in pro play. So you really have to consider that when you're doing a tier list. So some of these gods, while a lot of gods are not really better than others in this game. It might seem like it sometimes, but there are some gods that are perfectly fine and just are in B tier because they're not popular or they're just not seeing any play. So there's a lot of reasons why a god might be in a B tier compared to an S tier. So with that, we're going to go into it. And again, I want to keep this to maybe like a few lines per god. I don't want to get too in depth with each one. But we're going to start with Agni. Agni is a pretty balanced mage, definitely not at the top, somewhere in the middle at the moment. Has a good getaway with his dash, but other than that, his damage isn't as strong as other mages, so he's going to stay in the A tier for me. Amu's Cab is a pretty weak hunter because of his low mobility. I said this last time, they buffed his honey recently, but it didn't really matter. No one's really playing him, so there's no reason to ever play him unless you're doing casuals. He is fun. He can clear the wave pretty well. It does a good amount of damage, but there's really no reason to ever play him, so at least in ranked play. Apwash, he got a buff, a pretty good buff too, his fleeting breath ability in this last patch. Um, so, that's good. I don't think he's gonna move up because of it. Like he might, but I think his burst damage is a little too tough to confirm. Once you shoot at your corpses for your corpse explosion, the enemy has, a couple seconds to run away from it, so they can get out of that burst damage pretty easily. You really just have to understand how to zone against an Opwash in order to counter him, and so that's why he's pretty low because he's easily countered. Um, on her is a good hunter, getting some play in the SPL. I think Transcendence works really well on him as well as Throwing Dagger. I think you could do either start. He has a really strong early game with his penetration, the penetration from his passive, really good wave clear. Struggles a little bit late game, but if you can build him right, then he'll do fine. So I think he's one of the better hunters right now. Amaterasu, I think, is also A plus. Her biggest thing is she struggles with early clear, but other than that, she's fine. She has a really good team fight ultimate. She late game she goes really well with um, as a supporty type solo laner with her one ability giving the attack the movement speed as well as the extra damage buff. So that's really good. She's a kind of a supporty solo laner, which I really like. So she's very strong at the moment. Anubis is pretty bad. Probably should stay in B tier for the moment. Just the lack of an escape is just a huge issue, and it's something that people have been saying for forever. He has no escape, and it's really just the kind of elephant in the room as far as Anubis goes. So he's easily killed late game for sure. Ao Kuang is one of the best junglers for sure. I think the most interesting part about Ao Kuang is, his ultimate has been broken forever since he was his they changed his kit up since he got a completely new thing. He used to be like old Kukulkan and now he is the Ao Kuang you know today. And his ultimate has been broken forever. His execute, if you compare his execute to a Thanatos execute, it's better in every way. So a Thanatos execute is an AoE circle, so you can miss it. And not only that, but if let's say you kill a god with your execute as Thanatos, you are then stuck in wherever you land. So let's say you dive a tower to kill someone with your ultimate, you're all of a sudden stuck. If you dive into a team fight, you're probably going to die after that, and it's risky to take that chance to do the execute. But you may get the kill off of it. Without Kwang, It's a guaranteed kill because you can't really miss it. The only way you can is if they beads or Aegis out of it, and it's also an escape. He can fly across the entire map after he ult. So it's literally he can go in, get a kill, and then get out. So there's really no reason to think that that ability isn't broken, in my opinion. And not only that, he does a lot of burst damage. Polynomicon is perfect for him, so he's one of the best junglers for sure. Aphrodite is bad. She just can't get online. I've been seeing her a little bit more when I've been playing recently. I think people do like the healers. They just know that the solo lane is kind of being completely dominated by those warriors, and even some hunters can go in the solo lane as well. So there's just no place for these healers. There's nowhere for them to go. It got even worse than it used to be, and her late game is good, but you can't really get her online. And don't try her mid because if you're playing against a Scylla with Power Pot and Soulstone, you're going to get wrecked. So you don't want to play Aphrodite. Apollo is one of the best hunters. I think he is probably S tier. He could be the best hunter at the moment. With throwing dagger, they just nerfed it. I think they're gonna nerf it again, maybe in the patch coming. I think there's gonna be a patch coming up soon. I'm not sure when. Um, Oh, also the last patch, just to, if you're wondering when this patch or when this tier list is coming out, it's a week after, so about a week after the Weaver of Fate patch, which was the patch where they changed Arachne's base skin, so that was pretty cool. So that's kind of gives you a reference if you're watching this a little bit later. Um, but I think they're gonna nerf Throwing Dagger again, so that might hurt Apollo a little bit because his early game clear with that item is really strong. But I still think he's one of the best hunters, getting played a lot too. Arachne. So as I said, Arachne, they just changed her base skin. They didn't change any of her stats. I think she's an A tier jungler. To me, she's Kali Junior. Why play Arachne when you can play Kali? Kali does so much more. She has a good escape, whereas Arachne has her ultimate as an escape. That's it. Kali can also confirm her damage a lot better with um, her three. I think her three is a better stun than the Arachne cocoon thing. Like you have to hit it. You have to hit a basic attack 3 times in order to get that. Whereas Kali can just go in and use that ability and then get her basic attacks off. So really, Arachne to me is just Kali Jr. I don't see, there's no reason to pick her when you can play Kali. Ares, I hate Ares. I've said this before. It's really tough to hit his chains. I mean, if you're good at that kind of stuff, like hitting those types of abilities, then that's fine. He does do probably the most damage of any Guardian besides maybe Cabrakan, or you could also maybe argue Bacchus as well. But he does a lot of damage. The only thing that I don't like, and this is kind of an issue with me, but Ares can steal kills a lot, and it has to do with the fact that he does so much damage, and he has the burn damage off of his flames, that if you're a hunter and you're getting your basic attacks off and Ares is flaming them, then his dot damage from that might steal a kill. So I noticed that he does steal kills a lot, which can be tough if you're trying to get your ADC huge. So I think he's B plus tier. You could argue A, he's not bad, but um, he's just, as far as Guardians go, I think he's on the lower end. Artemis is still bad. They buffed her like 3 patches in a row. Didn't really matter. She has no escape. She's kind of like the same as Apwash and I'm using Cab. If in Anubis as well. If you can't get out, then what are you gonna do? Like Artemis, you can even get like a bunch of early game kills and carry hard into the late game, and you're still gonna get picked off because the other team's gonna see that Artemis and say, well, we have to kill that Artemis because she's a terrible god. We can't let her beat us. And so she kind of has um, a scarlet letter, if you will. You don't want to let Artemis beat you. Athena is one of the best gods in the game. She's definitely S plus. Her global ultimate is ridiculous, and her taunt is one of the best abilities in the game. So she's S plus. Wheelix, I think, is probably A plus. She's getting played a good amount. One of my favorite junglers, his name's Homi or Homofe, whatever you want to say it. He plays a Wheelix a lot, and he does pretty well with her. I think she has a lot of control, which is kind of interesting for a jungler. She has her feather step, which gives a little bit of like they can't really move during that ability, so that's control right there. Her ultimate is a huge CC kind of ability. She also has the knock up, which is another form of CC. So she has a lot of CC in her kit, like control. So she's an interesting jungler in that way. Bacchus is, I think, A tier. Very strong, does a lot of damage, getting played a good amount in the SPL. I don't really like Bacchus, but he's definitely A tier. Bacchusera is now S tier. I was thinking, I heard Bacchusera is really good now. Um, he got a buff to eat minions, so his early game is very strong. He is a high harassment, like he harasses the other team's jungle a lot early game, so he can just go in and steal the other team's boars so easily. So with that, that just allows him to get huge in the mid to late game, and he does a lot of damage. And I also think Sunder on him is great because he has true damage on one of his abilities. So if you early game, if you get Sunder first relic, you're going to be doing true damage off of that. You're also going to be reducing protections. And if you're playing against, let's say you gank a mage who has the Dynasty Helm, whatever, that gives some physical protections. If you get Sunder and you have Bakasir's true damage, you're pretty much going to eliminate the protections on that item. So he's a good counter, I think, to that build at the moment. So um, I think that's another reason why he's really good at picking off mages early. Um, Bastet, I think, is an okay jungler. You're not really seeing her at all. She has good early game with her cats, but I think the cats fall off a little bit late game. So she's A tier. Bologna is probably S tier. Yeah, she's definitely S tier. She's, has some of the best clear of any warrior. She has a pretty bloated kit. She can do so many different things, and you're seeing her a good amount in the SPL. So she's S. Cabrakan. So Cabrakan is interesting. I had him in C tier last time. I'm gonna move him up to B because, as I said, Paradigm, the EU team, is using him pretty effectively. I do think that he has a place. He was played by Kivo Fred in the jungle, and then Zayla used him in the solo lane. And I think he has a place in the jungle. He definitely has a role as a supporty type jungler. Um, but you have to have the right comp for it, and you have to have the right player using it. You can't just have, you know, Andinster going with Cabrakan. That's not his playstyle. I think it worked with Kivo Fred because he understands the um, the zoning with Cabrakan, and he's not going to go in there trying to like get the pick. He's really just like kind of setting up the other gods in his team. So I think he does have a place, but he still is bad. Not a good support at all. So he's B tier for me. Shock, I think, is A tier. He got played in the SPL and did okay. So his late game struggles a little bit, but I think if you build him right, if you get some early kills, you have good early game clear, you can get into the late game and do okay. So I think with that, he's A tier. Chunga is B plus. Again, as a healer, just struggles and just has a lot of difficulty getting online. But once she gets online, she is pretty strong. Chiron is, I think, A plus at the moment. I haven't seen him at all recently in the SPL at all. But he does still clear the lane very well. He has a good lane clear ability with his AoE, has the healing, of course, and his ultimate is actually a little bit worse than it used to be with the reduction of the movement speed. I think that hurt his ultimate a lot, so I think he isn't quite S tier at the moment. Kronos is S tier, one of the best mages in the game, getting played a whole lot in the SPL. Um, once Kronos gets online, he's so dangerous. Like his attack speed is crazy. He has a lot of damage with his abilities. He's maneuverable. He's a very high utility type of god. Cupid. I think Cupid is a solid A tier hunter. Doesn't get played at all because he's Cupid. He's kind of, pathetic. You don't, who wants to play as his baby? Like, who wants to play as him? He kind of has, again, another, like, scarlet letter on his chest because he's kind of a ridiculous character. So I don't think anyone will ever take him seriously because he's Cupid. But he does do a whole lot of early game damage. He's the best level 5 hunter in the game for sure. And his hearts are completely underrated. So I think he's strong, but because of the fact that he's Cupid, I think he's still A tier. Fenrir is, I think, A plus. Um, lot of early game damage, goes well into the late game with his ultimate. You have to build him kind of tanky in order to not die during his ultimate, but he's another high harassment god, so he's pretty strong. Freya, I think, is A tier. You know, as Arachne is kind of Kali Junior, I think Freya is Soul Junior. Soul is another basic attack kind of mage who can also be like ADC, and Soul is just better in every way. I think like Freya has a good ultimate, but the fact that Soul has strong attack speed, and doesn't have to activate an ability to get that. Just makes her better than Freya. So she's A tier. Geb, I think, is A plus. Definitely not the best Guardian, but his shield is OP, so you can't really question that. I think his early game does struggle, so that's a weakness of his, but he's still very good. I think he's A plus. Guan Yu is S tier. His heal is still very strong. They nerfed it like 2 patches ago. Didn't matter. His heal is still overpowered, and he harasses a lot in the solo lane with his Tallow Assault. And that heal is just really, really annoying. Not only to play in solo lane, but also in team fights. So, one of the best solo laners for sure. Hades, I don't really like Hades. I think Hades has a lot of issues. High burst, but is a very close range mage, and I just think as a mage you should have some long range abilities where Hades has like a dash, but it doesn't really do that much damage. His 3 and his ultimate are really his main damaging abilities, and they're both really close to him. So he's a tank who does damage, kind of a weird character, and I don't know if I like it. I think he's B plus. You're not going to see him in the SPL, at least not now, because they're just other mages that, again, you want that long range as a mage. You want to be able to sit back, and there's no place really for a tanky mage at the moment. Um, Hebo is B. They just buffed his Alice of the River, or what is it? Map of the River? I don't even know what it's called. But his little 2 speed boost debuff thing, they buffed that to do a bigger speed buff to allies and bigger speed movement speed debuff to enemies, which is like, yeah, that's cool, but you know that ability still kind of sucks. It's like it seems like a waste to me, even though it does push the lane. You know, I feel like as a mage you don't really need that. You just want damage. Um, Hell is, I guess, B plus. You know, she's still in that healer category of just struggling early game, but can carry pretty hard late game if you get her online. Hercules, I think, is a solid A god. You know, he was there for the longest time, then he like dropped way down to B tier, but I think he's gone back up to A. You know, you might see him every now and then in the SPL. Um, Very hard to gank because of his healing. So he's a pretty safe soul laner, I think you could say. Hui is still S tier, maybe S plus. He probably carries harder than any other hunter in the game. I was actually looking at some of the base stats for the hunters, and Hui has the highest base damage at all levels. I'm pretty sure it was all levels, at least level 5. He has the highest base damage. Um, so I mean, so that just lets you know he is the best hard. So yeah, he's just really good, and his big AoE ultimate is very disruptive in team fights as well. So he is S tier for me. Hunbats I think is A plus. Very strong jungler. Has always been kind of in the A plus range. I don't think is it as S tier. I don't think there's any reason to put him there, but he's definitely one of the better junglers for sure. Isis is I think S. You're gonna notice that there's a lot of gods that kind of are in the S tier right now. I think there are a lot of really strong gods at the moment, whereas I mean, usually it's kind of in the middle A tier, but I think gods are slowly moving up. Like I think Hi-Rez is doing a good job at balancing the game. There aren't really any gods at the moment that are like stupid OP. You could argue Ao Kuang and maybe Athena, but there aren't any that are like way, way, way out of there. They're balancing it pretty well. So I think, and they're balancing it in a positive direction. It's not like all the gods are getting worse. They're all getting better. So I think there's a lot of gods in the S tier right now, and Isis is definitely an S tier mage. Janice is also S tier for sure. Jingwei is garbage. Like she's D tier for me. I'll put her in C just to give her a little bit of respect, but they just buffed her again. But like, who cares? Her abilities are just terrible. Like her little knock-up, um, whatever that AOE thing, like it's the worst ability I've ever seen. I don't know what developer approved that. Like Hi-Res Scott, why would he approve that ability? It's literally does a little knock up, and then yeah, you might get out of position a little bit, but it does 0 damage. It does knock you up again. You can only get knocked up once if you're an enemy. It's also very small, so it's hard to hit. It's like, what's the point of this ability? I don't get it. Agility is the most pathetic dash I've ever seen. You can combo the little knock up with the agility and get, yeah, you can chase down, but it's actually kind of hard to do, and it's like, why would I do that when I could just have a Cupid dash or just like some other god with an escape? I don't want to use up two of my abilities just to get away. Like, I don't understand the design of this god. Maybe the buffs will help a little bit, but I doubt it. We'll see. Kali is definitely S plus. Another just carries so hard, like you can't beat a Kali. You cannot beat her. She's gonna get early kills, and she's gonna carry hard into the late game. It's pretty much guaranteed. So she's definitely one of the best junglers. Khepri I think is also S plus at the moment. I think Khepri and Athena are actually on the same tier because I think his ultimate is just so strong. He can peel pretty well as well. Is more of like a true support guardian, so you kind of want to stay back a little bit. Excuse me, and use your abilities when it's safe. You don't really want to go in there and attacking because that's not what his abilities do. Um, but he can zone very well, and his ultimate is just super strong. It's kind of like you want to have a Ged Shield on your team, just like you want to have a Khepri ultimate. There's just no reason not to have that ability. Um, Kukulkan is actually moving up to A tier. I think some people are playing him. MLC Stealth has been playing him a lot. Incon played him not very well because Incon is not a good mid. Um, who else? Shadow Nightmare is a player that's been playing Kukulkan or has played him in the past. So I think he's pretty good. If you can, the biggest thing with him is you have to combo him with um, a god that has a hard CC. You have to like use that combo, and not just to say, oh, well, maybe I'll use my ultimate whenever someone roots someone or whatever. You have to like plan it out. Say it, on comm. Say, all right, I'm going to use my Athena taunt. Use your Kukulkan ultimate right now. That's kind of how you really do have to play him. The best combo is a Naja ult into a Kukulkan or like Naja into a Raw ult. So you might see a lot, and because Naja is strong right now, I think that combo is actually very good. So he's A tier for me. And again, that ultimate does a lot of damage. Kumbhakarna is there's all these K gods with these long names. It's so hard to say them. Um, I think Kumba is an A plus guardian. Has I think every one of his abilities is a CC ability, so probably has the biggest CC chain in the game. Very, very annoying to play against. His mez is super annoying. And he does a lot of damage too, so I think he's definitely one of the better Guardians. Loki, I guess, is A tier. I hate Loki. I don't really get it, but he can split push well, and I did play a game recently where like we won because of Loki split push. So in those types of games, he works, but I don't like him. I don't like the playstyle. I don't like that we have to go 4v5 while Loki takes down the towers. It's just not my play. Like I'd rather work as a team than have this stupid Loki player like doing his thing. I just don't like the playstyle. Um, Medusa is very strong. I want to put her in S, but I'm gonna put her in A plus. I think people. So the biggest thing with Medusa in the past has been other hunters just have been a little bit above her, and there hasn't been any merit. Even though Medusa, I think, is extremely strong and can absolutely wreck. But you saw like Chiron was one of the top hunters, so it was like why play Medusa when you can play Chiron? Why play Medusa when you can play Hu Yi? But now it's kind of getting to the point where Chiron's falling off a little bit. Um, Apollo's back up there, but I think Medusa is kind of rising up because some of the hunters aren't as favored as they used to be. So she's definitely moved up because of that. Mercury is good, but just no one cares. He's just completely fallen out. The biggest thing I guess is his early game isn't very good, but he's still very strong and can do well. But people just don't really care. Neith I think is a strong A tier hunter. You're not seeing her that much, but is an easy god, has good escape, good mobility, has a global ultimate, so she does a lot, but she's just not really in the meta at the moment. Um, Nemesis actually is coming into the meta. I think she's A tier still because there are other junglers that do um, a lot better than her, but her shield is actually super annoying to play against. Like she's a pretty high defensive kind of jungler, which is an interesting role, but I think she is just she has such a weird kit that people are just maybe a little bit intimidated by it, but she can do very well, especially in the right comp. Um, Naja is one of the best junglers at the moment. Um, I think he's an S tier. He's getting picked in almost every game. his damage is just super crazy. And again, his ultimate can set up other abilities so well. So like even if you don't kill people with your Naja ultimate, you can just use it, and then once you land with them, the rest of your team will do the cleanup. So I think that is just a great combo to have. Again, Kukulkan ult with that is very strong. Raw ult. I like to do like a Kumba Mez after they land, just to set up it even more. So Naja is very very strong. Nox just got some buffs. She got buffed to her three. Her three does like a lot of damage now. Her little dash, but I don't know. Like I don't like her kit at all. I don't like that it's super risky. You just have to be good at landing her combo. If you can't land her combo, don't play Nox. If you can land it, then that's fine. But I don't like the risk of it, so I think she's B plus. Nuwa is okay. Nothing really to say about her. No one's playing her. She's just completely out of the meta. Odin. I think Odin's gonna fall out soon. He had like a big resurgence recently, but I just think he's gonna fall out eventually. He is very strong. Has good. His bird bomb does a lot of damage, but late game his bird bomb does fall off, and he's just kind of like an ultimate machine late game. Like you just use him for his ult. That's it. Um, so Osiris is very strong. I want to put him in S plus, but I won't. Um, because they're just other soul laners that are just more favored. But he is so annoying to play against in lane. He beats Bologna, I think, in the lane. I mean, of course, if you have a good Bologna, that's one thing. But I do think Osiris can win almost every matchup in the soul lane. You build attack speed on him, and he's very annoying to play against. Has a good slow, which will really help you out as well. So he's a lot of fun. I think Osiris is really fun soul laner to play. So I like him. I would put him in S, but I'll leave him in A plus for the moment. Poseidon is completely out of the meta. I'll put him in B plus, but he's not in the meta at the moment. Ra is also Ra just sucks. I don't know. He has good healing, but he's a little risky. His ultimate I think is too hard to hit. Raijin is very good. Uh, Raijin's ultimate is great for a few reasons. So most mages, if they have like a big ultimate like a Raijin ult, so like Poseidon, Zeus, these high damaging kind of big ultimates, um, you know, that's one thing. But Raijin not only has the big damaging thing, but his ultimate has a lot of control. He can taunt and he can fear with it. You can't have that type of CC with a Poseidon and a Zeus ult. A Zeus ult does just as damage. Poseidon ult does like a little bit of knockup, I think, which isn't really that important. But they're mainly just there to do damage, and Raijin has both. And late game, having that ultimate as a CC is kind of like, if you think about it, if it's like a big Athena taunt. So it's very useful, and he just does so much damage late game, especially if you can get some early kills. So definitely one of the best mages in my opinion. Rom is pretty good hunter at the moment. As I said, there's gonna be a lot in S tier. Rom with Throwing Dagger is extremely strong. You're seeing people like Zatman play him a lot. Ataraxia plays him as well. So he's definitely in the meta at the moment. Rattosker is apparently going to get a buff soon. I'll put him in B plus because Divios plays him in Soul Lane every now and then, but he's still pretty trash. Ravana is actually moving up. He was kind of out and then is back in. He's not very interesting, I don't think. Like I think his abilities are very, very simple. He's just there to just bash people's brains in and just kind of just be that bruiser. So it's a good role for him. I think he's A plus. And I think you're going to see some more play out of him throughout the year. Scylla is S tier, being used a lot. The biggest thing with Scylla was that her early game was garbage, and now with the Soulstone buff, and now you can use Soulstone and Power Pot. I also like to add the Sunder. If you want to risk it, you could do Sunder First Relic. Start with the Sunder that reduces their protections. Get your Soulstone stacks up. Then use your root and your 2, and you'll pretty much just kill everyone like level 1. So that I think she has a very strong early game now, so that makes her extremely intimidating because she's good throughout the game. Not only is her late game completely ridiculous, but her early game now is good too. Serket, I think, is just not being played as much. She was considered like the best guy in the game for a long time. Is definitely very strong, but just is not in the meta really. And you're not seeing her getting played that much. Scotty, I think, is good. She's getting played in the SPL and doing okay, like not really doing that great, but she suffers from lack of an escape, and she's easily ganked. So she does have she's kind of like AMC, like pushes really well, but is also um, very easily killed. Sobek, I think, is a solid A tier guardian. Doesn't get played too much, but has some merit if you want to play him. Soul, I think, she's between S and A plus. She kind of fell off a little bit for me. I don't think she's as popular as she used to be. Um, the fact that the three doesn't have a stun anymore is pretty big. Her three isn't really as good. It's really just an escape. You don't want to try to use the three to like get damage off. Like, don't even care. Just use it as an escape. But still very strong and gets played a good amount. Wukong is A. Um, just not very popular. Can do well in the lane. Can go toe to toe with a lot of different gods, but just isn't no one's really feeling it. Sylvanas, I think, is A. I love Sylvanas. He's one of my favorite guardians, but you're not going to see him at all this season, like at all. I think maybe IRAFR might pull him out once or twice, but you're not going to see him. So, and I don't really understand why, but I guess he just isn't popular. Thanatos, I think, is also A. Um, can do a lot of early game damage, but just high risk, high reward. Um, but once you get him online, he is pretty scary. So I think Thanatos is a good A tier. Thor is definitely S. As I said, there are a lot of junglers that are just thriving right now. Like Bakasura is now coming back. Bakasura can also soul lane, but Naja, Thor has always been kind of near the top, but there are just a lot of junglers that I think are just doing very well at the moment. Tier is another, yeah, S tier. I was kind of questioning it because he might be a little bit of a step below some other but soul laners, but I mean, really, there are especially some players that just love tier. Like Dimmy loves tier. Who else? I'm not really sure, but there are just some players that just like destroy with tier, and I think he, um, has the heal which allows him, and I think you're seeing like Guan Yu tier, these gods with like that early game sustain that allows them to just be in the soul lane for longer. They don't have to back as often, which allows them to also save their teleport if they buy that. So that sustain really does help tier. Uller is actually kind of moving up. I think he's still A tier, but getting played a little bit more. Got played in the mid lane by Herwind. Not my favorite god. I've actually played him once, I think. I just don't like the stance changing. I think it's just another thing that I have to think about when I'm playing him, and I just don't want to do that. Like, I just want to use my abilities. That's probably why I don't really like Hell either, because I just don't like the stance changes. I think it's just like, why would I add another thing to think about? Um, but that's just me. Vamana is definitely A plus, probably a step below tier Bologna. Um, some of those other soul laners, but I think is pretty much aligned with Amaterasu, so that makes sense. Um, can clear the lane really well, has a slow which is nice. Has kind of like an escape with his ultimate as well, so he's a very high utility god, I think. Um, Vulcan is really good. I don't like. I'm questioning whether to put him in A plus or A. I'm gonna put him in A plus because he carries very well late game, and not only does if you can get him online, does he carry really hard with his ultimate, but he defends phoenixes as well too with his turret. So he can drop his turret, go back to the base to heal up if he needs to, and the turret's still going to be doing work. So that's really good. Having a turret, your turret, in a relatively close distance while you go do other things is like one of the best things about Vulcan. But also his ultimate is a great way to defend Phoenixes. Um, so he's really good. You're seeing Pretty Prime use him a lot. It's like his favorite god, and he's very good with him as well. So um, I think Vulcan. You're going to see a good amount of Vulcan coming up, which is great. I love Vulcan. Uh, Xbalanque was like B tier. Now Zapman, started using him and did well with him. Obviously, Xbalanque can carry hard in the right hands. I think he's probably A tier now. People were like, "Oh, if you do throwing dagger on Xbalanque, you will have the throwing dagger proc, and you'll also have the branching bolas. So your early game clear is going to be stupid." And that's, I think, has some truth to it. That being said, not building Transcendence on Xbalanque is dumb. You need Transcendence because his one uses so much mana. You really need that sustain. So I think Xbalanque is actually better with Transcendence, even though his early clear would be stronger with Throwing Dagger. Xing Chen is garbage. I think probably one of the worst gods besides Jing Wei. The root on the little body slam ability was actually really important, and the fact that they took that away made him like useless. He has, as far as CC goes, he doesn't really have much. His ultimate actually isn't very scary. They nerfed his HP 5, and he doesn't do any damage. Like, he does 0 damage, so there's no real reason to use him. Uh, Emir, I think, is A tier. You're gonna see him get played in Europe. No one really plays him in NA, but a lot of damage. Um, and if you can place his wall late game in the right way, it can completely change a fight. So, using that Emir wall is very important. Zeus, I think, is also A. Getting used quite a bit in the Pro League, but I think he does struggle with the mobility thing. So you kind of have to play really safe with him. And then the last one, Zhang Kui, I think is also A tier. No one's really playing him at the moment, but I love him. He's a good tanky mage, does a whole lot of damage, has a heal as well, so he can sustain well in the lane. Yeah, that's it. So that's the list. Those are my choices for the gods right now. Let me know if there's anything that you think I got completely wrong, anything that you like. If you have, your favorite gods, let me know where you think they stand at the moment. And what gods you are excited to see in the Pro League. I know for me, I'm excited to see more Bakasur and Vulcan. Those are the two ones that I really enjoy seeing. I also like Scylla. So if you watch SPL and you're excited about some new gods coming into the meta, let me know which ones those are. That'd be great. But I thank you very much for watching, and I hope you have a great day.